Nashville Design Week is a platform for bold collaborations and conversations that promote idea sharing, engage and educate the public, and strengthen our city's design culture. We shine a spotlight on designers who are shaping the city's future and facilitate critical conversation about the industry's growth and impact.
2020 has challenged us in every way. A tornado, a pandemic, and a long overdue reckoning with racial inequity. And as we close in on a formative election, we are excited to focus on the power of design to reshape communities and to actively support equity. We are proud to introduce a diverse range of speakers covering everything from racial injustice and inequity to diversity and inclusion, connectivity, and allyship, all through the lens of design.
We're fortunate to partner with design leaders who are invested in the future of Nashville's design community. These leaders see Nashville Design Week as essential and support making design discourse accessible to all. Thank you endlessly to our 2020 sponsors for helping us bring Nashville Design Week to life. Thank you to founding silver sponsor, Hastings. Hastings is a boutique architecture and interior design firm of 75 professionals who are deeply committed to the service of clients, producing award-winning, thoughtful, and impactful architecture. Thank you to silver sponsor, Watkins College of Art and O'Moore College of Architecture and Design at Belmont University. The Watkins College of Art and the O'Moore College of Architecture and Design celebrate the power of art and design to transform people, communities, cultures, and the world. Thank you to our copper sponsors, Elevated Outcomes, Interface, Smith G Studio, and Textures Nashville. Thank you to our bronze sponsors, Aberdeen Studio, Alfred Williams & Company, Circa Creative Studios, Dade, EOA Architects, Earl Swenson Associates, Emmanuel Zeitlin Architects.
And thank you to our media partners, Dezeen, Lightning 100, and Nashville Interiors, and to creative directors Lindsay and Alan Lassiter.
Nashville Design Week is proud to be a fiscally sponsored project of the Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville, a nonprofit organization. Nashville Design Week is an entirely volunteer effort made possible by the tireless dedication of our team. Now, let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Katie Laughinghouse. I'm a volunteer program coordinator for Nashville Design Week 2020. On behalf of the Nashville Design Week team, I'd like to welcome you to Amplifying Black Voices, Black Women in Design. I'm excited to introduce our host, Tiffany Capehart. Tiffany Capehart is a realtor with Parks West Nashville, where she provides traditional residential real estate services, in addition to assisting investors purchase vacant lots or investment properties. Tiffany is also an urban planner with 13 years of experience writing, speaking, and practicing in the areas of urban planning and community engagement. We thank you all for being a part of Nashville Design Week 2020. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tiffany.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Welcome, everybody, to Amplifying Black Voices, Black Women in Design. And I'm happy to be here with some girlfriends. Yay! This is a panel that I've wanted to do for a long time. And so I'm just happy that these ladies are here. So before I introduce them, I'm going to go into a little bit of why we're here, because I think that's really important. So the panel has been several years in the making. I've been an urban planner and realtor here in Nashville for a combined and overlapping 14 years. And over those years, I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing people, both in public and private sector. But upon entering the private sector as an urban planning consultant, I've met with a lot of development and developers and designers, and I discovered that I was sitting across the table oftentimes from white males or predominantly, white professionals. And so subconsciously, I started thinking about, where am I at in this equation? Where are Black women who are developing at scale, who are designing our spaces? Where are we? And I think it was also during a time where some of our Black male counterparts were getting a lot of notoriety in the around development in Nashville. And I just kept thinking, where are we? And so as I kept doing the work and meeting some of the women that we have here today, I said, I really want to highlight these women and what they're doing. And then George Floyd happened, and COVID happened, and the racial unrest that we've been experiencing since all of time came to a very a hot point this summer. And the idea of amplifying Black voices became a real thing. And so I wanted to amplify Black voices, Black women in design. And so another reason why we are doing this is because just a few data points. Okay. So according to essence.com, which is a leading Black magazine for women, as of 2019, there were only 452 licensed women architects in the United States. Okay. So that's only 0.3% of architects in the United States are Black women, 0.3%. So that's really low, really, really low. And disappointing. And even with that, women in real estate and development have only a 1 in 12.6 chance of becoming a senior level executive in commercial real estate, whereas our counterparts, white men, have a 1 in 3 chance of becoming a senior level executive in real estate and commercial development. So these numbers are small, and despite this, the Black woman's influence on the built environment is continuously felt. Our voices are growing in the fields of real estate and development and interiors, and we're leaving positive impacts on our communities and putting our own stamp on the design process. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. And so the people that I have with me are Delisa Gurrier. Hi.
Hello.
She is the managing partner at Estate Development. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I also have Victoria Morgan. Hello, Victoria.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Tiffany.
Victoria is the owner and principal designer at Havens Hollow Interiors. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we also have Valerie Franklin. Hello, Valerie.
Hello, Tiffany. Hello, everyone out there.
And Valerie is an architect and senior associate with Moody Nolan, and she's the founder and president of the Nashville chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects. And Valerie and I also sit on the board of directors together for the Nashville Civic Design Center. So welcome, 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 everybody. And so it's funny because I know all of these ladies, and I think some of them are just really getting to know each other as well. So it's fun that we get to sit on this call together and hopefully also be able to do some work together afterwards. So we're just going to jump on in, and I hope that what our audience leaves with today is a greater insight into what you all do. And then also, more importantly, as we're amplifying our voices, I hope that there are women on the call who have considered careers in real estate development, design, and can find some inspiration to move forward with that. So, So, and these were all of our introductory slides, our beautiful headshots. So let's talk a little bit about career. So, Delisa, is this something that you've always dreamed of doing, being a real estate developer?
No, not at all. This was the last thing that I thought I'd do. I'd actually planned to be a doctor, a physician. I was pre-med in college, and I was headed to medical school when I met my husband. And he sort of came from this entrepreneurial background. He's from Haiti. And he said, why be a doctor when you could own the hospital? And I never thought about business and real estate or anything just as a career path at all. And as a child, my favorite thing to do on the weekends was going to go look at model homes and anything like that. My mom would take us all the time. And so shortly after that, we were looking for our first home, and I enjoyed it so much. It sort of opened that door. So.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
I was trying to find a picture of your mom to add into the. Can you say just a little bit about your mom? Because I think that was a major influence. I've heard the story before, but tell the audience the story.
So my mom is one of the only Black women pile drivers in California. So she essentially she builds bridges. So she's a certified welder. She's a very, very respected, senior in that field. And I looked at my mom and I said, if this lady can build a bridge, I can build a house.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And see, and I love that. I love that story. My daughter, Ava, playing with building blocks, and she'll say, Mommy, look at the city that I built.
Yeah.
Just never know what influence we have on our families, and your mom had an influence on you.
Yeah, she did.
I'm going to jump to Victoria. Victoria, can you tell us about your pathway to interiors?
Sure. So I have always loved interior design. However, I didn't necessarily know that it was a career option. My mom and grandma, they all are, they just love to decorate and style their homes, especially for holidays. And so I just thought this is what everybody does. And in my family, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. You're in something where you go to an office. That's not really a position that my family thought, oh yeah, you should go to school for that. So for me, I wanted to be I wanted to be a psychologist. So I went to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and got my bachelor's in psychology there. And then I came to Nashville to attend Lipscomb University and got my master's in professional counseling there. And although I love the therapeutic space, it didn't lend itself for me being creative. And I found myself wanting to do more and more design work because I was helping friends and family, but not in a business capacity. So I became a product manager for about 10 years in the transportation industry. And that really was an outlet for me to kind of fine-tune my organizational skills and management of both people and products. And didn't realize it, but it was definitely a full circle moment when I decided to leap into interior design. That's essentially what both of them are. It's management and also lots of counseling in the design.
So just so the audience knows, Victoria is the designer who has helped us with our house.
Yeah.
And first of all, I cannot see you doing counseling. I don't see it. My husband's a counselor.
Yes.
I don't see you doing counseling because Victoria lights up when she's presenting like, this is what I think you should do, And so I don't see you like sitting down and like listening. Like,
yeah. It's different because that's more in counseling. It's just more listening, I'm listening to what you're saying and processing it and seeing how we're going to guide this conversation for you to come to the realization of what you need to be doing. Yeah. But that's essentially the same, I feel, with interior design. Most people don't know what they want, but they know very clearly what they don't want. And that's how we build a house backwards and in terms of having it reflect what you like and your beliefs and values, both expressed and implied. We just kind of work that way back. Because if I just come up to a client and say, well, what do you want your house to look like? That's a very broad question. They don't know where to start. HGTV has confused so many people. So to try to unpack that very big question, we just kind of we start with the smaller questions about what colors do you like? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Simply because I've learned that introverts prefer chairs, having a little bit of boundaries, whereas extroverts like sofas or something where we can all sit and gather together.
Yeah. Well, we'll get more into your design process here in a little bit. But it is interesting the path that you took to get to what you're doing. Yes. Awesome. All right, Valerie, can you talk to us a little bit about how you became an architect? I know that is something that that's something I actually wanted to do when I was a wee little girl. I thought of architecture. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I can, and oh my goodness, Tiffany, my path to becoming an architect was so crooked. and let me tell you why. I mean, when I was a kid, I loved making things. You know, I used building blocks, logs, mud pies, decks of cards was like my favorite thing, to make the little castles out of decks of cards. I drew. I looked through the magazines. You know, I did all of that. You know, but I didn't have those mentors. You know, when I was younger, to say, hey, you know, you can be an architect. And so throughout my education, and when I got to high school, you know, I even took shop classes where I had drafting and everything, and nobody was still like, hey, you can be an architect. You know, so I gravitated towards you know, people that I saw that were successful. And since I was, you know, going to be the first person in my family to go to college, I really didn't have those people to look towards, you know, in my family, as far as, you know, career choices, you know. So I gravitated towards, you know, people that I saw on TV. And if you know me, everybody knows that I wanted to be Claire Huxtable when I was growing up. So I went to college. I went to Tuskegee University as a political science major. I wanted to be a lawyer. Prepared to become a lawyer. And it just so happened that I met some students that were in the architecture program. They saw the talents that I had, because I was still drawing and, you know, everything. And they were like, come to our studio. I want to show you something. So I went into their studio. It was a 4th-year studio, and my mind was blown. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I found myself hanging around the architecture building, helping them with their projects and everything. And I was just like, they were like, and why are you a political science major? I was like, I got it all wrong. I got it all wrong.
Yeah.
And so I changed my major to architecture. And I still credit them to this day as being my first mentors.
Oh, awesome. Well, that goes into the next question, because I was going to ask if you all had mentors that that influenced you through in that process. So, Delisa, did you have a direct mentor that you can point to? Or
no, well, so growing up, you know, with my mom in construction, my stepdad was also in construction. So he and his brothers used to build, I'm from Oakland, California. So a lot of the apartments and duplexes just in the inner city, I watched my dad build, and I would go and sit on his lap and help him draw the blueprints. And he'll say, always put the you know, the bathroom behind the kitchen if you can, so they could share the plumbing lines and you could save costs like that. And so, you know, that was sort of my foundation. And again, I thought I was going in a different direction. That was sort of my mentor. When I actually got in the field, I recognized that the industry was made up, as you shared the statistics, with a lot of people who didn't look like me. And with that, there wasn't a lot of resources to be able to pull from to figure out what to do. And so I had to dive in and make a lot of mistakes and pay for them and figure out my way. So.
Yeah. What about you, Victoria? Any mentors that have helped you as an interior designer?
yet tons, but they don't know that they're my mentors.
Okay. A lot of people we gather guidance from, and they don't even know that they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some people that I've fostered friendships with here are Evan Millard with Modern Remains. It's an interior design firm locally here in Nashville. He and I started being friends, and I just bounced lots of ideas off of him. He's at a point in his business that I aspired to, as well as Ahmad Freeman with Ahmad Freeman Interiors. He's wonderful. Talked quite a bit as well. Also, though, more recently, a developer that I'm working with has taken on a bit of a mentorship role because I typically work with homeowners. And so helping to design spec homes has opened a different field that I've not tapped into yet. So they've definitely been mentoring me on that realm.
Right. What about you, Valerie?
Well, like I said, the students in architecture program at Tuskegee University. It just so happens that if you know anything about architecture, there aren't that many architectural schools that you can go to in the nation.
Right.
And in Alabama, Auburn and Tuskegee are the two. And I just so happened to go to Tuskegee and they had an architecture program.
Yeah.
Had I not chosen to go to Tuskegee, I would not be an architect today. So because of that lack of mentorship that I received, I am like a mentor on 10, so it's just like I try anybody that talks to me about architecture, I'm like, yes, let's have a talk. And this is what you need to do. And this is where you go. So it really helped to develop a heart for mentorship within me, the lack of mentorship that I got.
Yeah, and I think for me too, I mean, your experience was at an HBCU, and similar for me. I went to an architecture kind of workshop at the University of Kentucky, and which I still have some of my sketches from that I'm going to hang in my house, Valerie. I got some freehand. I'll show them to you, Victoria.
I would love to see.
But I ended up going to TSU, and they had an architectural engineering program. And I was like, okay, well, architectural and engineering, but I was really looking for my Hillman, and so that's why I went there. But it was the professors there that really mentored us, especially his name was Dr. Hinton Jones, and he really pushed us to go get our architectural license or go get our engineering professional licenses. And one of my professors just so happened to have a background in urban planning. And so I was like, well, what's that? And I researched it and realized that those were the people that shaped our cities. And so I said, oh, well, that is a career I want to go into. So I went and got my master's in urban planning. And then it was a young woman, a woman that I worked with by the name of Emily Liu. And she was an Asian woman, short woman, about shorter than me, but she was my boss. And she encouraged me to take on projects, even as a grad student, that, somebody that was already having their planning degree would do. So she pushed me in that way. And then when I got the job in Nashville, she said, go, you need to go. So mentorship is so important. And I've passed that along too, even as a planner working for the city. When I saw a young woman, a Latino woman that came in to the office, I immediately kind of pushed her into you need to go and be great. And she's doing great, so mentorship is so important.
Tiffany, I just want to say, as I grew in the career field, I tried to look, towards, people that would inspire me. And I came to Nashville, and I met the first Black woman architect that I ever had encountered, even being, a student at Tuskegee University. And she's on this call right now, Lynn Jolly. She was the first Black architect that I knew, and I was at a point to where I was getting discouraged in my testing and things like that, and she just encouraged me to go on and get my license. And just seeing her in that position, that she was architect, and she was a Black woman, and she made it. It really inspired me to do the same.
Valerie, I'm not gonna cry on this call today.
I'm surprised I got through that without crying.
I mean, I don't think that, you know, because even Dr. Hinton Jones, he passed away, but me and all of my friends from TSU went to his services, and to see all of us there, I mean, that is what this life is about, right? Is, you know, having an impact on people.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, you know, I think we kind of, as Black people, we kind of pick these careers, but like, how can I say this? I think for a lot of us, going to college and doing the things that we're doing is somewhat a privilege. And so, and one of the things I was finding in the research was that when people get to these positions, whether you're architect or developer or a designer, there's a sense of responsibility that comes with these titles and with these jobs and careers. And I think as Black people and as women in particular, we hold that responsibility with us, which was the next question is like, do you feel that responsibility being a woman in these fields? I know I do.
Oh yeah. And you don't have the luxury of, I would say, being yourself, or just having your own opinion about something, because when you're an only and you're very few, people look at you. I'm carrying the whole Black woman race, you know, on my shoulders. I can't have my own opinion about something because this is what they're gonna think that all Black women think, you know. So you don't have that level of anonymity when you come into a room of having your own, you know, your very own outlook on something, without it being projected upon your whole race and gender.
Yeah. Delisa, what do you, because I know like the stakes are really high for you, because you're literally developing, you know, like whole neighborhoods. So like what does that feel like for you in terms of responsibility?
So I think that, you know, as we all, you know, we grow up, right? And children are going through high school and college right now. They learn that real estate in any capacity is a way to build wealth. You know, some of us learn that later, some of us learn it sooner. Mm-hmm. But I think that in the Black community, especially, we don't see the path to get to it. And because of that, I find that the weight is heavy. You know, as Valerie said, I don't have the luxury to not take the meetings. You know, anyone who reaches out to me, anytime I have the opportunity to do a panel, to speak at a school, you know, I do it because I feel like there are children, there are, you know, people who need to see that there is a path and that it is accessible, and that level of wealth is available to them as well. And so I've had high school students, I've had college students just email me, Facebook message me, and ask for meetings to just talk about the path to it. And you know, as busy as I am, I make time for that because I feel like it's important. You know, if there's any little seeds that I can plant, any level of direction that I can give that wasn't given to me,
right?
You know, to help them in that journey, you know, I'm more than happy to do it. So
yeah, absolutely. Victoria, do you experience that kind of? I hate to call it a weight, but yeah,
responsibility. It's a level of responsibility.
Yeah. I most certainly feel that. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and so it's a blue collar city. And so what I'm used to is men typically are laborers. They use their bodies in factories to provide for their families. And if the woman works, typically she's in an office in an administrative capacity. And that is perfectly fine. But being creative, there's not room for that because there's not perceived to be, that's not a lucrative position. Or at least it's not, we don't have that example. We don't no one in my neighborhood needs an interior designer, so we don't think that that's a potential.
Right.
That's not a potential field that you're going into. So I most certainly aspire to go back to my high school. It's Whitehaven High School, and talk to the students to tell them more about the opportunities before them. I didn't even really think about being an interior designer, because I just was like, no, you have to make the best money, you have to be a physician, and that's the only way you can be out of this. And just kind of explain that there are other ways. Of course, now I guess kids have YouTube and they aspire to that. But knowing that, to Valerie and Delisa's point about real estate, I didn't know that that was a means to making money, to leaving a legacy for your family. I say that because even in my family, when people die and they have a house, and some people don't want to simply pay the taxes on it, so then the whole family has lost out on that opportunity of property. That's wealth in your family.
Right.
What is important is, to everyone's point here, is just the knowledge, knowing what you can have access to. And so I definitely feel a responsibility to share what I know now, because I 100% did not know that then.
Right. Awesome. Well, let's jump into talking about some of your projects that you've done. This is Nashville Design Week, and one of the things we'd like to dig into is the work. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about this. So yeah, Lisa, we'll let you go ahead and jump into, this was one of the projects that you said was a game changer for you, and how so?
It was. So when I first started my career in real estate development, well, first I started just sort of flipping houses. And this was during the time when the recession had finished and everything was stabilizing, but there were a lot of people who were in a bad financial position. You know, maybe their interest rates were really high. They would have to either short sell, or they would get foreclosed on their home. And so my husband and I had a lot of friends and clients who we took the opportunity to help them by going in, putting the money into their home in order to sell it, for them to walk away with their dignity, with their credit, you know. And so after that sort of fundraised our development company. We started buying land infill, and a lot of you know infill development is where it's in the inner city, you know, where you take a lot, tear it down, and build 2 houses or 3 or 4, whatever the zoning allows for. And that's what we did. This project here was the first project that really made me a developer. So I thought I was a developer when I was building 2 and 4 houses, but I had no clue. This one right here sort of changed the trajectory. And I guess in the capacity that I recognized that I could build subdivisions. Like I can, you know, I can go and buy 200 acres of land and build a community. And this was the start of that. You know, I found out soon that a developer means you have this raw piece of dirt, and you have to bring everything to this piece of dirt in order to be able to build a house. You can't, you know, just go and build it. And so the utilities, you have to grade the land. You have to, you can't really see it, but I had to put in a lot of retaining walls and bring electrical transformers, and, you know, just a lot of
Everything.
A lot of everything. And so this, I sent this project in because this project was that turning point in my career to where I said, I don't want to do the infill. I want to create something greater. I want to build communities and neighborhoods, and this was the first one. So
yeah, well, and that's why, you know, when we met, that was one of the first things I thought about you. I said, she's doing it at scale, because so often, you do meet developers, they're doing the 1s and 2s and, but to do something at scale, I had not met anyone Black in Nashville that, that I felt like was a peer of mine that was doing. So,
This one, I gave my husband a lot of gray hairs.
I can imagine. And it's all sold out right now, right?
We have 3 left to sell. So if you know anybody.
Okay. And I know the realtor on it. He's fantastic. So I know that he'll get it. He'll get them done. Yeah. Awesome. So Victoria, tell us about this. This was one of your favorite projects, and tell us why.
So this is my favorite project just because it's my home. I strive to minimize my personal aesthetics in my clients' homes because they live there, I don't. And so leaning into the psychology part of it all, I try to talk to them, get to know what they like, what their styles are, and reflect that in their spaces. So when you look at my portfolio, it will vary quite a bit. Because I'm not building it for me, I'm making it for them. So I like my home just because this is the first home that I've lived in. That I've been able to actually start to infuse my personality into. And so doing that with my husband, it's been fun. We obviously like the color black. And having our families, because neither one of us are from Nashville. Both of our families, mine is in Memphis and his family is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and in Jamaica. So it feels good to have family nearby on pictures and just kind of finally starting to see yourself reflected somewhere, because that's very rare in Nashville. At least it feels that way for us. Maybe it's because we're not from here and we're still trying to figure out where our community is, I guess. We found that, of course, with church, and now with our house, it finally feels like home.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny. I talked to my students at TSU about the meaning of home, and how it's your first place where you, like you said, you kind of create your identity from the inside out. You know, and so and then what you've been helping me with in our home. So funny story, when Victoria was presenting the design boards, I almost got teary-eyed because I was like, Victoria, I ain't never had nice shit before. Like, this is you kind of buy things, because they may look cute, but they may not look cute all together. And so she's been helping us kind of really identify what our aesthetic is, and it made you sit back and say, is this really, I didn't know this was my aesthetic. This is really nice.
It's an awakening for sure, because I think the furniture stores that we might grow to love and like, they're really good. Obviously they have nice furniture pieces, but they're really good at marketing. So they know how to trigger basically to get you to buy something. So then when you get it and it doesn't look the way that it did in the CB2 catalog, it's just kind of maybe disappointing, but figuring out what speaks to you and why is what I try to focus in. Like, why do you want a large blue painting over your dining room table? Did you see that somewhere? Or is that really what you want? So kind of working through that has been, I just think, very rewarding when a client walks into a home and but my biggest compliment is, this feels like me. This looks just like us. And we've done it right.
Good. All right, Valerie, what about your favorite project?
So let's talk about this box that you pushed me in.
Well, you can go out. You can have the line.
Let me tell you about this box she pushed me into. I'm not used to talking about my work and my designs to like an audiences like this. I'm usually advocating for everything. And so when she was like, send me some, so I sent her slides of all this, and she said, send me your work. I was like, okay, all right, now I get the chance to talk to people about how I advocate with my designs. So I'm number one, I'm glad for this opportunity. Number two, I do want to talk about this project. Now, this project, this is an example of what happens when you let an architect do interiors. You see how I brought all of the exterior into the building. The thing about this is that, there's always, with me, it's always an effort to bring the exterior to the interior, because I look at it as a whole project. And I look at it as a project for the people. The people that I designed this building for were cancer patients. And you wouldn't know from looking at it, right? All right. So the location is in the mountains of Colorado. And the goal here was to create a resort feel and to create a health hotel.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you said that, because it totally makes sense now.
Okay. Good. Yeah. The idea was to create a health hotel where people can go there and they forget about their illness, for a minute, get, places to sit and reflect and think. And, there was a reflecting pool in there. There was actually a kitchen in there so that you could smell like bread baking and different things like that. So there was a level of warmth, that I sought to bring to the whole project. And that throughout doing that, I was able to touch a lot of the senses, touch, taste, smell, just sight, and creating those nice and relaxing moments when people are going through something very, very stressful. And even in the chemotherapy rooms, I made sure that the windows were like really big and you could see the mountains. It looked like you're outside and you were getting your chemotherapy treatment. So that people could just forget a minute, that this is happening. And really, as we go through COVID and everything right now, it's just like enjoy those moments while you have them.
So my mother is a cancer patient, breast cancer, and she's doing great. But so that's why I connect with this so much, because when she was going through her treatments, I sent her some like aromatherapy things to bring into her room and to kind of make her her treatment room feel a little bit more homey. And so this is the impact that design has, and that's one thing that like as we are designing my house, I was telling Victoria, is that I feel like as Black folk, we don't always think about the impact that design has on our lives, right? I don't think we really think about that wholeheartedly. Do you all agree with that? Because just when you're talking about how you design this building, I mean, that has so many different impacts. And in designing our house, I told Victoria, I want our home, I want my children to feel like they grew up in a beautiful space. Yeah.
And it's not designing a building or even a space, it's designing an experience.
Exactly.
And if you do that, then you've succeeded.
Yeah. Yeah. Victoria, you were going to say something?
I said exactly. I think what I like to speak to when working with clients is we're creating a safe place to land. The world is so chaotic. So much is going on, and you don't want to go home and experience more of that. Yeah. So that comes when picking the textures for your sofa and the depth of your sofa. Do you like to lounge in it? Does it need to be deeper than 41 inches? Or are you just going to sit up and watch television? Things like that. That's so important. It's more than just matching the sofa to the rug to the drapery. It's all about functionality, and that's going to vary family to family. So I definitely agree.
Well, I love that. I love that, guys. And I think that that speaks to the meat of this conversation is, why design is just so important. Design is so important in every kind of aspect. So in doing these projects, so we're Black women, and we show up to the meeting with our briefcase and our laptop bag, ready to go to work. And all of a sudden we're in the project, and now we've met some challenges, right? Talk about some of the challenges you've had with implementing some of these projects and ideas. Delisa, you want to?
Well, I think, stepping into this space, we were met with significant challenges. I would say the majority of the ones initially was when it came to getting projects financed. And we've had some experiences with banks where we closed on a loan for our first construction development. And after we closed on the loan, I called my banker because I went back and I looked at the numbers and I said, something is not right. We just finished signing the papers. We were all in closing together, and he's talking and making sure I'm not paying that much attention or something. And afterwards, I called and he said, I didn't mean to bamboozle you. So we've had a lot of challenges there. And I think that.
So he didn't mean to bamboozle you, but he did bamboozle you?
Exactly. And so, it was because he funded the construction loan and he funded it close to $100,000 short of what we needed. And so if we were in any other financial position, that would have, that can, mess someone up. And thankfully, we ended up selling the project before we finished and didn't even have to worry about it. But that was a challenge. I would say, my husband and I, we've taken on the development world together, and we had a solid foundation because we owned another business that was doing pretty well and was the foundation, for it. But we didn't have those relationships.
Right.
And it was hard because you don't find a lot of banks that are, before you didn't find many that were looking to fill their minority bucket, and how can you get a project done if you can't get it financed unless you pay cash for it? And so we got through that. We built some solid relationships, and we realized that that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Is having very great relationships with banks and financial institutions. So.
Yeah. And I think the plight of being Black in this country too is, you think about those kind of mistakes and it's like, did you do that because of my background, my race, my pigmentation? Is that why you did that? Or was it a mistake? Or, it's always kind of in the back of your mind, unfortunately. And there was another thing that we talked about, Delisa. There was a grant program or something through government. And it was like, it was something about being a woman and being a minority that you qualify for the money. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. There was, are you talking about recently?
Yeah, you spoke to my class about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I believe there,
Go ahead.
No, there was a grant out there that was for, the one that I remember, it was for a minority development company that was doing something that was health focused or had something to do with some sort of health thing. Is that the one you're talking about? I'm sorry.
I have to remember what it was. It was it was something about, it was a one of the, you had to be certified in a certain way. And it was like you were kind of doubly,
Oh,
I'm losing.
you must be talking about the certification. Okay, that's another thing. So I went and got my certification with the airport. So when you get certified with the airport, you can certify yourself as a minority. The classifications are minority business enterprise or women business enterprise. And when I went, I thought that I would be able to be a double minority, because even though my husband and I developed together, I hold the contractor's license. So I'm licensed for residential, commercial, and industrial construction. And they said, well, because you're a minority, you only get to be a minority. You don't get to be a woman-owned business. And that sort of cut me, deep, because first they didn't allow me to classify myself and put myself in the pool that I would prefer to have been in. And second, they're saying that only Caucasian women can be women-owned businesses. And so that created a huge challenge. And that's something that it's not only the class of, when you get certified with the airport, you're certified with the whole city of Nashville. And so I only get the opportunities, to bid against other minorities and not women. And so I hear that that's something that they're working on changing, and I hear that change should happen soon. But if anyone else doesn't like it, please feel free to voice that out to them so they can make that equitable,
Yeah. Well, I remember you telling me about that. And like I said, in some of the research that I was looking at ahead of the talk today, that is a disadvantage that we have, is that we're Black, but then we also are a woman. So we kind of have those two issues. Valerie,
and so there's another level to that too. If you're a large minority firm, you cannot be classified as a minority firm. Or as a disadvantaged firm.
Oh, so if you are above a certain number of employees, you cannot.
Or they tie it to revenue, employees, all of that. If you get to be, a large firm, which we all aspire to grow, so really a disincentive for growth, because even though you're a minority firm, if you're a large minority firm, you cannot be classified as disadvantaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that, and so those are the types of changes that I think need to be made as we continue to talk about amplifying Black voices, real economic development and change. It's those kind of micro policies that you don't think about until you're faced with them, and it's that roadblock. Right. Yeah.
And I did want to touch on the some things that, that have been challenges for me, as there probably are for the rest of the women on this panel. And those are microaggressions. And so they pretty much, they run rampant. If you haven't looked at or researched these lean-in studies that do studies about women in the workforce. They also cover Black women in the workforce. But they, during their studies, they said that Black women are the most likely to have their judgment questioned in their area of expertise and to be asked to prove their competence. So this is something that we deal with every day. You have to prove yourself every day. And that is part of that load that we were talking about, that you have to carry around, having to prove your competence, because I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to people and told them that I'm an architect, and they say, "Oh, so you build houses?" I just designed the hospital, or so and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with designing houses, but don't put me automatically in that box and say that I can only do this. I can't do commercial buildings. I can't do corporate, architecture. Oh, you do houses, and then truth be told, a lot of women, Black, white, they get that question. Oh, okay, so you do this, and then they see the skyscrapers and all that stuff. That's things that white males own. So so microaggressions. That's one thing that I believe that we all deal with.
Yeah. I've even had that happen in my career. Well, actually, no. I heard a Black planner talk about that. His name is Mitch Silver, and he's a planner in New York. And I believe he was the director of the Parks Department in New York, and before that was the planning director, I think, in Charlotte. But he talked about how he was like, I'm a Black man. I love working in Harlem. I love, those communities, but also put me in the financial district, also put me in downtown, because I still want to be able to have those conversations with those folks too. And I can do that. So it's kind of like, don't just put me in a box. I can do a lot of different things. And so for me, I was kind of that same way. Like, I loved working in North Nashville and working with communities out there, but I was like, I also need to stretch myself. I need to be able to have conversations in Bellevue and Green Hills and other places. So it's like, don't just put me in that box. Yeah. So I'm going to go forward into kind of talking through our design process, because I want to make sure we get to some questions from our audience. Have there been questions and chats coming in?
Yeah. Well, I see one. I think it was Lindsay Lassiter. She had a good question about who do we contact to voice the fact that you can't claim yourself as a minority-owned business and a woman business. Who do we complain to about that?
Metro Nashville Airport Authority.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for asking.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about you all's design process. Okay. So Delisa, you want to jump in and talk about, like, how do you, because I've met your husband is super fun. Do you guys collaborate a lot together? Does he let you work with your architects and designers, or how do you go about that?
So the last time I allowed my husband to have any say in anything design wise, we had this bright blue, I'm talking Cat in the Hat blue, on a building in East Nashville, and we both wanted to hide under the bus. So, so yes, I definitely do that side. So my husband is more over sort of the acquisition and the strategy stuff, and I get to be the visual side. I get to be the creative side, and that's what I love to do. So the first step is to call my civil engineer or you, I've called you before, and look at what it is that this land, what the highest and best use would be, what we could yield, and if that makes sense. And if it does, then we move forward with calling an architect and starting just sort of the design process. So it's a long, arduous process, but it's fun. Towards the end, we call a designer to help us with finishes and colors and materials and all that good stuff. And then we start the process of the groundwork, which depending on how big the subdivision is or how big the land is, it could be 30 days or it could be 9 months, and before you actually start seeing buildings come out of the ground. And
and just so the public that's watching, if you're not familiar with the development process, I mean, you could go a year, 2 years, 3 years with just due diligence, just changing the zoning on property, going through design, getting approvals for all of that before you even see anything come out of the ground,
That's
so
right.
a lot of times people think like the growth that they see in cities, they're like, oh, they're just doing all of this stuff overnight. And, but a lot of these things have been approved for a long time. Just be the market that's keeping it from actually being built, but it's already approved. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and we just had a story come out about our project in Bordeaux this morning on the Nashville Post about our projections to break ground in the second quarter of 2021. And we're excited about that. But there's a long process that happens before you can start moving some dirt. So.
Right. Victoria, you want to talk about your design process?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when I looked at this mood board that you had, I was like, that looks like somebody's room. Room?
What was it?
Was this mood board inspiration for the master bedroom?
Yes, it was. When I was pulling samples and like, that doesn't work. This works. So yeah, that's what I was doing there. So for me, I typically always start with a questionnaire and a 30-minute phone call. My questionnaire just kind of gets down to the meat and bones of what it is this client is anticipating from what's the anticipated outcome. So what is it that you're looking for? What spaces are we tackling? Is it a whole home? That kind of thing. And so after our 30-minute conversation, I provide them a scope of work. And that's more or less to just explain how many hours I anticipate needing to devote to this particular project of design time. So I break it down into, I have something called design blocks, and then I also have full service interiors, and I break the design time out in those two frames. And the reason I do that is because some people do want to get in there. They want to paint themselves. They want to make a shelf. They want to do these things themselves. And then we have the full service interiors where they just want to hire me and come home and it's finished. So we have that. And then we have a 90-minute consultation where I'm in the house, and that's where I'll ask, it'll feel like an interrogation probably, but tons of questions about their vision for the space, the functionality of the family, how many people are in the family, are there pets? Are we going to have an in-law suite, and how we might accommodate for that? So that conversation, and I also measure at this particular meeting. So then after that, then I present to them a scope of work. And that's where we sign to say, yes, we'd like to work together. We like what you're thinking about. Let's move forward to generate a proposal. So the proposal is based on the generation of it. Depends on the size of the project. So it can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 weeks to getting the full proposal done. So in that time, I am, of course, sourcing for the project, creating a space plan, talking with subcontractors, and generating bids to present to the client at a later date. So then after we have the proposal, the clients approve or deny everything that I've done. And once we've landed on something that everyone is agreeable with, both within budget and style-wise, then we move forward. So then that's kind of when I think clients get antsy, because it looks like happening, and that's when everything is happening.
So my question for you is, so Victoria, in your design process, like you're making stuff for your client, but when do you get warm and fuzzies? Like, do you, because I know you see things that your client likes, but like when you saw this green chair, you were like, ooh, Tiffany's don't like that green.
Yes. If I'm honest, it just kind of jumps out to me. After I've met with the client a couple times, if I have a link to their Pinterest board, or if I've seen their home and kind of see the direction that they're trying to hit, but haven't quite hit it yet, then I kind of take on their style. And so then when I'm out, I'm like, she's gonna like that piece, or he's really gonna need that in his man cave. So I don't know why, that just kind of broadens my reticular. And then that's when I'm honed in on what the client needs after I've gotten to know them a little bit better.
Yeah. So, I mean, this literally, the picture that the audience is seeing, this is literally what one of the design boards that Victoria presented for our bedroom. I maybe should not have shown y'all my bedroom.
I love it.
Yeah.
But this was the room where she showed us, and I was like, oh my God, this is really, really nice. I've never had anything this nice, and it's gonna push us into a place that I've never gone before. You know, I've just kind of have put up curtains before or some pictures, but never experimented with wallpaper or colors. But I'm looking forward to implementing it. And also, I think what's important too, Victoria, to note is that these pieces are also inspirational. Like if we, you know, because some of the pieces I was like, child, that's gonna break mama's bank, but but it's used as inspiration. So I love I really enjoyed the process.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Valerie, what about you? How do you, and I'm always interested in architects' design process, because I think what we see is the experience is the final product, but there's so much that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. My design process goes way back. way back to pre-K. And we didn't even call it pre-K then, we called it Head Start. So it goes back to Head Start. When I was sitting in my class, this was when I first started to notice architecture. And I was sitting in my class, and I remember sitting next to a wall. And you know, the walls are concrete, you know, CMU block, and they're painted. Mm-hmm. And I remember just sitting there, just playing with the wall, just touching it, you know, feeling the textures, noticing the temperature on it, and thinking to myself, how did they build this? You know, how was this done? And then another thing, you know, that same experience, I went home to my we lived in the projects, public housing. I went, and we had concrete walls. Mm-hmm. And we had hard floors, you know, and everything was still cold. And so I was thinking to myself, I was like, I want warm spaces, you know. And I remember, like, after that, throughout, you know, my childhood, that's why I was looking in those books. I was looking in those architecture record, or, you know, whatever those architect interiors. I was looking through those, and I was looking for that warmth, you know, that feeling of home. So in my design process, I feel like that as architects, we have the power, and as designers, we have the power to inspire. We have the power to inspire with our work. And so I always strive to convey a certain richness in design, using shapes and colors and textures that will in turn enrich the building user and inspire them. Yeah. Just like Victoria and Delissa, you know, there's a level of engagement, you know, that has to happen. And we have to do that as designers. We have to engage who these buildings and these spaces are for. After you engage with them, there's a level of full immersion. And like Victoria just talked about, she becomes you. Becomes you. And so what I do, I become my clients. And in some of these pictures you will see, I had to become a child. I became a child. And so, you know, in some of the spaces, I was like, what would a child see, you know, if they were looking through that? You see that one picture where the kids are looking through the wall where there's a, you know, window. If I'm a child and I'm looking through, do I want to be looking through something that looks like a fence, or do I want to see my environment?
Right.
So, you know, you think about those things, but then you also think about people walking by and the privacy that it creates. So you make it harder for them to see in, and you can kind of see you see the legs walking by. He would actually have to lean down and look into that space, which is a child care center.
Right.
in order to see in, so that you still create that level of privacy from looking in, but you still connect, the children to their environment on the outside. So I took those cues from my childhood, and I create spaces that I want to be in myself. And I think about how I would feel inside the space, how I would move through the space, what could be improved with the space, and even in space, what can I learn from the space? And it was an opportunity that I had to keep the mechanical systems and things exposed, and I love doing that whenever I can, because that teaches children. This is how your building works. This is how it works. This is the system, and you could use that as a STEM study. Within the classroom. Your classroom.
Awesome idea, actually, Valerie. That's a really awesome idea, because architectural engineering is all about the interiors. That's my undergrad, and so it's all about the interior of a building. And so that's an awesome idea, to have some of the building guts exposed to where you can actually teach students about that. That's a great idea. Now, I think the design process is awesome. The architect, and maybe you know her name, Valerie, the architect that designed the African American Museum in DC.
Rena Howard.
Yes. Oh, yes. She came and did the talk at the Civic Design Center's lecture, and just her, like, before they even got to designing a building, they did all of this background research of artifacts and the way that the building would be situated and communicating with the other monuments in DC, the way that the light would hit the site, the way that, it's just all these different factors that went into the design process before any lines were even drawn. And so I'm always fascinated by that. Even with my clients, when I'm working with developers and investors, the first thing, I try to get them to do is really envision the site based on what the community is telling you that it wants, based on the land use policy. We try to, versus just plopping buildings on a site, you have to really think, like, what is the context of this site? How is it going to engage with the neighborhoods on north, east, south, and west? How is it going to connect? What is the future of those neighborhoods going to be, and how is this development going to fill in with whatever future development could happen? So the design process is just completely, it's so important.
Yeah.
It is. Definitely.
Okay, so we're gonna, because I want to get some questions. Let's see what we have in our chat room very quickly.
There's one question that came in a few minutes ago that I have to address, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
It was submitted by Julie, and it says, an observation question that I hope doesn't come off as accusatory, but wondering, as a female, it always makes the hairs on my arms stand up when I hear a woman say, I'm the creative or visionary, and the male business partner takes on the business side, strategy, finances. Do you have similar concerns as a female? And so I guess I was trying to say, and was hoping that it was clear that, and maybe you need to know my husband, but when I said my husband more leads the acquisition side, I hope that's not confused with him leading the business side. There's a lot of things that happens. We all have to know our strengths. My husband is a master negotiator, deal finder, and that's what he's good at. I'm not so great at that. I more so take on all of the business after that. And he goes sometimes in the field and gets dirty. But everything that has to do with putting performance together, projections, getting things financed with the bank, negotiating with the banks, and so on, happens on my end of the conversation. And so I recognize that that's probably something that does happen. I would say that that for me, I've been very thankful to have the support of my husband to sort of, come in and dominate this male, profession. And his support is very encouraging. But as I said, I hold the licenses, and a lot of the heavy lifting falls on me. So forgive me if there was any misconception when it came to that, but that's not my experience.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think we also talked about that a little bit, Delisa. Because I think you said your husband, he's like, no, you got it. You're in front.
Yes. He is the first to say, no, this is my wife's company. And which is the reason why it's registered as a woman business enterprise. So again, I'm thankful for that support. And as I said, I grew up with my mom in the position that she's in. And I had my stepdad around, but it didn't last long. So my mom was this single woman in this male dominated industry. And that was my vision. And we weren't in the South. And I saw another comment saying that that's maybe a predominant thing that happens in the South. But we were in Oakland, California. And so I had this role model, that's a Black woman who's unstoppable. And so I appreciate sort of that guidance and that strength that I got from her. So I just wanted to address it.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And let's see, someone else also asked, well, I don't know if this was a comment back at someone else, but I wonder, how are you making sure your practices also are including, I hope I'm not getting this acronym wrong. Can someone help me? BIPOC, people of color, I guess, and then LGBTQIA individuals.
BIPOC is Black and Indigenous people of color.
Thank you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So
is that directed towards me? Sorry.
No, I don't think so. I think it's just a general question. I think Amber Curry, if she wants to reply in the chat, how are we making sure practices are including these individuals? And maybe we'll come back to it if Amber wants to clarify if she's talking about like practices in terms of what we were talking about with certifications and like that, or if it's anything else. I'd love to hear what she's thinking.
Sure.
Any other questions that came up? Okay.
She replied and said it's for everyone.
Okay.
I'll take a shot.
Okay.
I'll take a shot.
Go ahead.
Okay. So when we think about areas where we have disparities, I do think that at times we need to compartmentalize so that we can fix it. We can't fix all problems at once. And so when we have those moments, and I believe, and I'm going to speak for Black people, we have this moment right now where it has been made apparent and there is a level of awareness that there is a problem that needs to be addressed. So we have to take those moments as rare as they come and jump on them and be very proactive in coming to those solutions. When we keep topics very, very open and very broad in any part of your life, and I do this all day with my to-do list. I can have a to-do list that's about this long and do nothing that day to chop that list down. But when I narrow my list down and it's things that I can actually do today, I can do this, and this today, I get them done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where we are with amplifying Black voices right now. That's the title of this panel. We want to amplify Black voices. We're at that point to where if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? If we don't solve these problems now, when are they going to get solved? So I think there is a point to where you have to laser focus to solve an issue. And if you think about lasers and a doctor, a doctor has a laser. He goes in for surgery and he pinpoints that thing and he roots it out. He cures it with the laser because he's focused. He don't have a big, that's a little pinpoint and you get it done. And then you cure that patient. I think that's at the heart of what we're trying to do here.
Because liberation for one person is liberation for all people, or liberation for all people equals liberation for me, for everyone next to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions that came out of our out of the chat? Let's see. Oh, so someone is asking, Jacqueline Smith is asking, do any of you currently have mentorship or internship programs? And when she's asking specifically to Lisa and Valerie.
I don't have a formal, mentorship or internship program at this time. I'd love to get there one day. But usually it's more of an informal process where someone reaches out and wants to sit down and just talk about first steps, second steps, and my perspective from my experience and just, dig into, how I can help. And that is something I'll be glad to do. And I don't know if my email is anywhere, but I guess I'll stick it in the chat. If anyone wants to email me, feel free.
And I would love to have the chance to talk to you, Jacqueline, for real. Just being, just as my position in NOMA, having access to a lot of architects and a lot of architectural firms. I love to be able to make some connections with you. My firm in particular, we have an interiors department, an interiors group. So I would love to be able to talk to you, even just to mentor you and give you some direction in your career path. So I'll send you my email.
Yeah, she was saying the question was for all of us. So what I would say in terms of mentoring with in the field of like urban planning and design, I'm not personally mentoring anyone right now, but I'm always happy to share resources of how you can get more involved in those conversations. The first organization I have to promote or plug is the Civic Design Center, where I'm the vice chair of the board there. There are plenty of activities and programming that you can be involved in just as a citizen. The Neighborhoods Resource Center, which I think they're at a different name right now that's escaping me. But they're focused on working with neighborhoods and in empowering neighborhoods. And there's so many different organizations. Urban Land Institute is a development organization that also focuses on urban planning and design. So I would say is to really just get involved in those. And then they also have, a lot of these organizations have student memberships that you can join as just being a student. And then you begin to meet people in the industry and begin becoming part of those conversations. Victoria, do you have any resources for students, mentorship?
So I don't personally have a mentorship program in place, but I'm very willing to speak with anyone who has questions or would like to know more. A couple of podcasts I would recommend for interior designers are A Well-Designed Business by Luann Nigera. I've learned a lot from her. And also Profit is a Choice. And that's from, what is her name? Profit is a Choice. Her firm, works directly with interior designers. Michelle Williams, that's her name.
Okay, awesome. And Joseph Cole is wondering, are there any organizations that you would recommend becoming an active member of that amplify Black voices in the built environment? So one, I would say NOMA, right? National Organization of Minority Architects. And you can join even not being an architect, Valerie?
Yes, we have a lot of levels of membership. You can join as an allied member and not be an architect. We also have a corporate. We have corporate memberships as well. So I just put my my email address in the chat. So if you are interested in being a part of NOMA, please reach out to me. That would be great. And we actually do. We are the only organization that focuses on the pipeline of kids from K through 12 through licensure and beyond. So it's a lot of programs out there that are catered to the architectural profession, but we really do understand that it's important to start very young, and because we have the ability to infuse our experiences into that process because what we lacked. So yes, NOMA is out there, and we are amplifying, voices, as well as lately the American Institute of Architects has JEDI groups, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. There are a couple on the statewide level, AIA Middle Tennessee and AIA Tennessee as well. So from an architectural standpoint, we do look to our largest professional organizations to be that landing pad in order to amplify our voices.
And I will also say too, again, the Civic Design Center has been a big proponent in amplifying not only Black voices, but really all voices in the city. And it's been my experience that a lot of that organizations in Nashville that are aimed at improving the built environment do have do kind of try to amplify voices, try to be very inclusive. That's one of the few spaces I feel in Nashville that I have felt included in a lot of conversations, or some of the organizations that I mentioned before. And I want to go back to Amber's question because she clarified. Her question was about, she said, I mean with clientele as well as with sharing the info, about being involved in this aspect of design. So talking about LGBTQIA community. So being a Black woman, I always bring my perspective, whether you want to hear it or not, because I have to walk through this world Black, and so being an urban planner, when I'm in a process where I'm listening and engaging communities, I encourage people to bring their perspective, whatever that perspective is. And it's my job to be a listener and be someone that can take that information. And I think everybody, at least on this panel, in their design process, is willing to hear any and all perspectives and include those in their design process. So I would say, to answer your question, Amber, directly, that is how we do it. It's just being able to listen and being inclusive of everybody that we engage with. Would you guys agree with that?
And I would add that just to get to where, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but to get to where I am and all of the challenges that I have faced when it comes to exclusion, there's for me, I lead with inclusion, so again, I don't encounter clientele much on the side of business that I do. But at any opportunity I have to speak with anyone, I'm, as inclusive as I can be, and whoever comes, I'm happy to talk and share. So
yeah, and I think also, I think we talk about representation, and representation really does matter. Because I've been in rooms before where it might have been someone Black. They didn't speak up in the meeting, but they'll come up to me afterwards and they'll say, the question I had, or thank you for being here, or can you explain something to me? And they might have walked out of that room not asking the question if there was not someone there that they felt comfortable. And so I would say that in these design fields, there needs to be the design world needs to reflect the people who are designing need to reflect the people we're designing for. That makes sense. I think that's how our communities, especially Black communities, ended up in the ways and where we are today, is because we had so many people for so long designing for us, and we weren't in those conversations. We weren't designing our communities, and so we're living with the result of that. Today. And so it's important that we continue to see these careers as viable careers, in the community. We need to be pushing students towards design-based careers, I think. So I'm gonna get off that soapbox, but yeah. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead, and I think we're close to our time, and Katie from Design Week is going to come back in just a minute, but I'm going to close us out in talking about amplifying Black voices, and kind of the reason why we're here is to make sure that people know that we're here and that we matter, and that our voices matter, especially in the design process. And so to close this out, I'm going to go to each one of you guys. In our fields, what are our roles in the liberation of Black people? Delisa, I'll start with you. It's a big question.
That's a heavy one. Well, I would say that my role is just to lead by example, and to be as accessible as I can, in order to help push and pull more people into this field, because to me, that's the only thing that I can do at this point as I continue to grow, is just to pull as many that are called to be in this area, with me, or lead them to it. So
thank you. Victoria, I'm gonna give you a different question to end on. What would you like how would you like to see voices of color amplified in the design field that you work in?
I would like to see amplification embedded in the thread of the interior design field, and not just tokenism. Because I think obviously it's a hot topic right now, and for good reason, but I don't want it to fade out. I don't want it to be, well, we check that box today and we can move on. I think having a consistent narrative, because quite frankly, I've been introduced to several incredible artists at this point that I definitely intend to use in my projects that I literally just had no idea about, no matter how hard I searched. I've been looking for them for forever, but until larger platforms decided to highlight them, I just had no idea of who they were or where to find them. And so I think doing more of that is what we need to see, where it's something that stays and it's not just the topic of the moment.
Right. And Valerie, for you, let's see, what is your legacy?
Ooh, okay. I've had this conversation recently, and I want to say that legacy is free. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. When we think about leaving a legacy, a lot of people equate that to something that's monetary. It doesn't just have to be that. It just, the imprint that you leave on this earth when you leave, that is your legacy. And we are all writing that narrative right now. It's been written in the designs that you do, like what we just talked about today. It's being left in the way that you respond to posts on Facebook. It's being left in the white papers and blog posts that you write. It's being left in the relationships that you create with people. And that is the legacy that we need to focus on. We need to encourage, we need to nurture that, and be able to, when you're not here anymore, have people reflect upon you, not only favorably, like, oh, she was a great person, but I learned this from her. I took this away from my relationship with her.
Awesome. Well, ladies, you have made this a joy to do. I've really enjoyed it. I knew it was going to be great. And so I really appreciate you guys giving your time to this conversation. And thank you, Nashville Design Week, for allowing us this platform to have the conversation. This is my third panel with Nashville Design Week. And so it's always a fun time to be able to talk about this stuff, with you all. So, Katie, I'm going to throw it back to you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Tiffany, thank you.
Tiffany, thank you so much for hosting this panel. Victoria, Valerie, and Delisa, thank you so much for sharing your voices with us today. Thank you, everybody who attended. Feel free to check out the Nashville Design Week calendar. We have a full week of transformative panels and programs, so check that out for some other programs to attend. And thank you all again.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.